Well, straight to the action on Dalal Street, which witnessed yet another choppy session. Major indices ending the day on a mixed note with 2 days to go for the budget. It looks like there are quite a few push and pull factors that are in play. The Sensex and the Nifty closing in the red, but with minor losses. The Bank Nifty was the top index gainer today, led by ICICI Bank. The index closed with gains of nearly 1%. Midcaps continued to see buying today as well. The index ended with gains of a little over 50 basis points. So the market's finally closing in positive territory ahead of the union budget. The top story, though, this evening, ICICI Bank has sacked former Managing Director and CEO Chanda Kochhar after an independent inquiry led by Justice Sri Krishna found her in violation of the bank's code of conduct in the Videocon loan case. The Sri Krishna committee, which probed the quid pro quo link in the over 3,200 crore rupee loan to Videocon, found Kochhar's role in violation of the bank's framework for dealing with conflict of interest and fiduciary duties. After considering the report, ICICI Bank's board has decided to sack Kochhar and in process also take back bonuses paid to her from April 2009 till March 2018. Ritu Singh joins us now with more details from that report and the penalties imposed on Chanda Kochhar. Ritu.
Well, you know, the 8-month-long inquiry headed by Justice Sri Krishna has found Chanda Kochhar in violation of ICICI Bank's code of conduct, primarily on account of her ineffective dealing with conflict of interest and due disclosure norms. And the bank, to make itself clear of this entire situation, has said the fact that these processes, the bank's due processes, are dependent solely on the discretion of the directors discharging their fiduciary duties and to recuse themselves to avoid this conflict. It is because of Chanda Kochhar's lack of diligence that the bank's processes have now been rendered ineffective. As far as the ICICI Bank and Videocon loan case was concerned, the bank and not Justice Sri Krishna, this is the bank, it further notes that there are no implications of this inquiry report on the published financial statements. This is, of course, for the scope of the inquiry, which was from April of 2009 up until March of 2018. Further, on receipt after receiving and studying this report, the bank has come to the conclusion that Chanda Kochhar's separation from the bank will be treated as termination for cause, and therefore the penalty that has been imposed on Chanda Kochhar is that all the bonuses that were given to her between 2009 April to now until March 2018 will have to be returned to the bank. Now, reading all of these, details that have been made public by ICICI Bank, there are still several questions that loom large. And first and foremost, of course, is the fact that the scope of the inquiry under Justice Sri Krishna was not supposed to be limited only, to the following of due processes. It was supposed to be all comprehensive. It was supposed to look into kickbacks as well, whether or not there was any quid pro quo. All of that has not been covered, at least in the part or whatever has been made public by the bank in its statement today. Further, what is the role of the board? Is the credit committee cleared of any charges? Is the board cleared of any charges? Because Chanda Kochhar alone has been found responsible for this. So these questions remain unanswered. Whether there is more to this inquiry, and also the timing of this, report coming now after CBI has, filed an FIR in the matter. All of that, of course, is being questioned. But yes, for now, Chanda Kochhar has been found guilty.
All right, Chanda Kochhar being indicted there by Justice Sri Krishna's committee. Lata here with us as well. Lata, what does this now mean as far as ICICI Bank is concerned, and also for Chanda Kochhar? I mean, Ritu, as was rightly pointing out, on the basis of what has been made public today, criminality has not been established. What has basically been stated in this report is that there was a violation of ICICI Bank's code of conduct because Chanda Kochhar did not recuse herself or inform the bank about potential conflict of interest. But criminality, at least so far, that has not been made public by ICICI Bank. We don't know whether Justice Sri Krishna has given any comment on that at all.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. What we know is ICICI's version of the inquiry report. We don't have the inquiry report, and it's a very succinct one-page paraphrase of the findings of that inquiry report, which must be a lengthy document. So what we know from the bank's press release is it is distancing itself from Chanda Kochhar's activities. It says that the inquiry report found her only guilty of the limited problem of not disclosing and not recusing herself. And they have given a fairly serious punishment of taking away 10 years of her earnings and all future earnings from her position in the bank. Now, criminality could not anyway have been established by the report. After all, Justice Sri Krishna could not have asked her for the bank statement of her husband. I mean, he has no authority to do that. He could have only looked at her emails and emails within the bank. He does not have search and seizure powers because he's been appointed by a private entity. So, you could not even have expected him to pronounce upon criminality. We don't know whether he says in the report that the bank lost any money because of it, of this action of non-disclosure. The way the bank is interpreted is that there is no impact on the bank's financial statement. So from there we can deduce that probably he has said that there is no impact of, the borrower getting any unfair advantage because of the non-disclosure. He probably has said it, and that is why the bank is saying that there is no impact of the inquiry report on the bank's financials. As for the ongoing investigation by the CBI, my sense is it has certainly made life difficult for Chanda Kochar, because this report will add to the evidence against her. Though it will be a fresh case of criminality, you will need a lot more evidence. When you're making a civil charge, then all you need to know is that, you should have disclosed, you should have recused. It's easy to make that complaint against her. To prove criminality will be very, very difficult. A final point, is the punishment excessive? Now, when I ask private sector bankers, they think it is excessive, because if you have concluded that there is no loss to the bank, you have said that the financial statement is intact, the borrower would anyway have got the same covenants, then why such an excessive punishment? But when I ask public sector bankers, they point to Usha Anantasubrahmanyam and say she has lost all her bonuses, though she had no conflict at all. It was only an act of omission, and she lost all her pension. So public sector bankers tell me that, well, are not public sector bankers punished? So this is fair. But, private sector bankers point out that if there is no loss to the bank, then why are they punishing her, taking away 10 years of her salary? Now, you are the judge for that.
No, you're right on you're right on that distinction, Lata, and I would imagine that the jury is still out on whether it is excessive or not. But the larger question on how the board has dealt with it and how the board managed this, because we saw the board coming out in support of Chanda Kochar. There was no inquiry. She was not asked to go on leave till virtually, in a sense, she was forced to go on leave. How are investors? How is the market reading what has happened today, and what will it mean as far as ICICI Bank is concerned from a market's perspective?
There are three different issues. One, why did the board give her a clean chit? The board will defend itself by saying, like, even the Reserve Bank did not find anything, impacting the financials of the bank. And therefore, we also did not find anything impacting the financials of the bank, and that is why we came in support of her. A second point is, even if they found nothing impacting, it clearly looks like all boards in India are in awe of their CEOs, and they don't really oppose them very easily. They don't call them to question when they are in power. They're beholden to their CEO in some fashion. There was a certain haste in giving her a clean chit. Why did not the bank say, why did not the board charge Chanda Kochar of not disclosing earlier? Exactly the same thing that the Justice Sri Krishna report has found. And thirdly, how will the stock react? My own sense is the results were very good. And in a sense, the Sri Krishna report is over and done with. The news is discounted now. So I don't think the stock should react negatively at all. It should react positively, is my sense. But, we'll have to leave that to the experts.
Okay. Add on, the board giving Chanda Kochar a clean chit back in March of 2018. Now, this is as per the bank's own statement. The clean chit was given on the basis of the report or the inquiry that was conducted at that point by the legal expert, Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. And the bank claims that following, the board statement that they were in support of Chanda Kochar, there were fresh allegations that were leveled. There were more whistleblower complaints, which they have not made public so far. And that is why that earlier report was not valid anymore, which is why they felt the need to appoint this new committee.
Okay, that's their defense.
Fair point. All right, that fair point. Ritu and Lata, appreciate you joining us there with the latest. The Sri Krishna Committee finding Chanda Kochar guilty in violation of the Code of Conduct of ICICI Bank. But the other story that we're tracking this evening, Dewan Housing Finance is taking Cobra Post to court. This after the investigative web portal alleged that the company's promoters siphoned off 31,000 crore rupees through shell companies. The company's stock continued to fall in today's session, closing about 4% lower, almost 5% lower. This compelled the housing finance company to clarify its position through a conference call. The DHFL management said allegations against the company are malicious and that it will seek legal recourse to examine the complaint. It also has termed the complainant's motive as a conspiracy to destabilize the company. In fact, spoke of business rivals being behind this. DHFL went on to add that the company is making no contribution to any political party or through a subsidiary. Let's listen in to some of the key takeaways from the conference call earlier this morning.
As a core investment company, which is regulated by the Reserve Bank of India, having got its approval for overseas direct investment, to be made abroad, we have remitted close to 100 million pounds, right, for making investments in financial assets, which has been duly disclosed at all points in time, including the balance sheet. And it is not even DHFL. Now, this was done at the WGC level, Vadhavan Global Capital level, which is the holding company of the company. So, to say that there are shell companies where more than 5,000 crores of money has been sent abroad, is itself, wrong. It's itself malicious and clearly has been done to malign the company's image in the public.
Well, that's DHFL. From one controversy to another. The National Statistical Commission, India's nodal body for all core statistical activities, is now effectively defunct. Two independent members of the vital organisation who were appointed by this same government in 2017 have resigned in protest. A career statistician, PC Mohanan, who was acting chairperson, and JV Meenakshi, an independent member and the professor at Delhi School of Economics, have resigned, saying the government was not taking them seriously. With their resignation, there are no independent members left in the NSC, and only the secretary, which is the chief statistician Praveen Srivastava, and the ex-officio member Amitabh Kant remain. My colleague Anshu Sharma spoke with PC Mohanan. Here's a slice of that conversation.
The reason for our resignation is basically we thought the NSC is not able to contribute the objectives for which it was set up, like being the apex body for all official statistics, and we were not being taken very seriously on.
Right. What are the key issues that you think were not being taken seriously by this commission, since it only comprised of 4 members? What could go wrong?
See, some of the key decisions are on statistical matters, nothing else. This is a purely professional body. So some of the key decisions on statistical issues were not coming to the commission or coming after it is already taken up. So that is why we thought it's not being very seriously taken.
What about the employment survey data, which is approved by the commission but not released yet?
See, the normal practice for NSSO report is NSSO is under the oversight of the commission or all technical work, and all NSSO reports are approved by the commission for release. And before the commission, there used to be a governing council, and from 2006, the governing council's job has been given to the commission. So all NSSO reports are approved by the commission, and then it is released by the NSSO. So there is one report which we approved, and that has not been released yet. So it's also one of the reasons. Okay.
There was controversy with regards to how Niti Aayog came out with a backdated GDP series. So you even raised it. So what was the whole idea of raising that as an issue? Did you reach out to the government and seek clarity as to how the commission will work, and what are the issues that is prevailing and that commission is not able to work on?
See, commission is not part of the government. It is an independent setup. So it is not necessary for us that we have to apprise the government. And chief statistician is secretary of the commission, is part of the government. So there is no issue. And what we did not like is the involvement of Niti Aayog in the GDP release, and not as such the figures or methodology or anything like that. And that is what we said.
Well, that's PC Mohan and their member who resigned from the National Statistical Commission. Meanwhile, in its response, the government has said that the NSSO is still processing data. The Indian Express, citing a source at the NSSO, reports that the government is most likely holding back the jobs report because it's not presenting a good picture. So that controversy continues. The Congress has slammed the government over the resignations by the members of the National Statistical Commission. Congress leader Milind Deora has called it an unprecedented event. In a conversation with Parikshit Luthra, Deora added that the resignations show that the government is scared of bringing out jobs data. Take a look.
It's a historic move in this country. It's never happened before that. I've never heard that the chairperson, no one less than the chairperson of the NSC, has quit because of pressure from the government not to release post-demonetization data on unemployment. And what that really signifies is that there is a serious employment and unemployment crisis in the country. It also makes it abundantly clear that a policy like demonetization, though it may have had some wins and some gains for the economy, its losses and its problems far outweigh the gains. And as a result of that, the government is probably too afraid to put this data out in the public. And I think that this is data which should come out. The country still doesn't know the extent of the damage caused by demonetization. The country still doesn't have a very clear idea as to why demonetization happened. Nobody has been able to answer in the government why, if you wanted to control the black economy and rein that in, why you replaced a 1,000 rupee note with a 2,000 rupee note. Why the government didn't follow RBI's advice and still went ahead with this in a very tardy manner.
Would you agree that the government is not serious about bringing out job data in public?
Absolutely. I think the government is fully aware that their policies, and demonetization being one of those policies, have created a massive unemployment problem in our country. And look, I'm also a politician, so from a political perspective, when I see the kind of spin that the government is presenting before the people of India in the run-up to the elections, at one level you're talking about the Ram temple, at another level you're talking about why it's important to re-elect Prime Minister Modi and bring about economic stability again. You know that these are two distractions to distract people away from the failures of the last 5 years, specifically with regards to the economy. We do boast and talk about the fact that the country is growing fast, but the fact is that there's jobless growth. The fact is that demonetization has caused massive havoc in the economy, the biggest loss to people seeking jobs, and that there have been a series of policies which can be debated. I mean, if you look at tax terrorism, which when we were in power we were accused of, tax terrorism is probably 5 or 10 times worse now than it is before. Talk to a startup of a technology company, the angel tax issue or so many other issues. And that has essentially led to some serious fault lines in our economy. One is, of course, and it's manifesting itself in unemployment, but it's also doing other things wherein you're seeing a massive flight of capital.
Well, the big development in the Rafale saga, we learned that the CAG's report on the Rafale aircraft deal could be submitted in Parliament in the upcoming budget session. Top officials have confirmed to Network 18 that the CAG is now in possession of the final draft of the report. Our colleague Arunima has been tracking that story, and she brings us up to date with the developments.
Well, 2-3 things. Number one, there will be 2 versions of that report. One which will be given to the Parliament, which will be the public version. This version may not have the price of those 36 jets mentioned. There will be a separate version, 3 copies of which will be given to the Ministry of Defence. This will perhaps have the price of those jets. The reason being given is that the MOD, in its response to the CAG, has said that in the interest of national security, the price of the jets should be kept away from the public, because if the price is made public, then enemy nations will get to know the kind of weaponry, etc., that the aircraft is coming loaded with. Number 2, what we are told is that in this session itself, the CAG is aiming to submit the report. It is saying if the Public Accounts Committee wants to know the exact price, it can get the original copy from the MOD. Even otherwise, as per CAG officials, the report that will be in the public domain will have the CAG's opinion vis-a-vis the deal's overall cost. What essentially the CAG officials are saying is that even without mentioning determining the exact price, the opinion will be given if the deal cracked by NDA was better or worse in terms of cost. And that should be sufficient for the PAC to make up its mind. So those are two important points coming out. Congress leaders we have been speaking to have made it clear that this kind of arrangement is not acceptable to them. If indeed the CAG puts an edited version out in the public domain, Congress will ensure that they raise the matter and target the government on this.
That's our colleague Arunima. They're reporting that the CAG report on the Rafale could be made public to Parliament in this session. Now, just 3 months to go for the Lok Sabha elections, and politicians are going all out to attract rural voters. Rahul Gandhi has promised a minimum income guarantee for the poor if voted to power. Many believe that this is a preemptive strike, as the government is also working on an income scheme of its own. Meanwhile, former Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramaniam has proposed an income support scheme. This scheme proposes to transfer 18,000 rupees per year to each rural household. Subramaniam has pegged the cost of the scheme at 1.3% of GDP, with a total outlay of 2.64 lakh crore rupees. Speaking exclusively to me, Subramaniam said the current agrarian crisis presents a political opportunity for a quasi-universal basic income across rural India. Calling for a rationalization of current subsidies, Subramaniam also warned against dipping into the RBI's reserves to fund such a move.
What we have proposed, most recently, this quasi-universal basic rural income, is just a kind of acknowledgement that the political opportunity for this has been created by the agrarian distress. So, policies don't just get made in a vacuum. You need some kind of conditions for it to come about. And, agricultural distress seems to have provided the political opportunity. And that's why we saw Raitu Bandhu and then Kalya being enacted. So what, and of course loan waivers as well. You
argued in the economic survey that the emancipatory value of basic income is several times greater than its monetary value. If you can break up the numbers for us and answer the basic question on whether we can afford this or not.
The way it would work, as I envisage, is that 1/3 of that 6,000 rupees would be given unconditionally by the center. And then the other 3,000, which would make up half the 18,000, would be take the form of telling the state governments, look, we give you money for centrally sponsored schemes. We will untie those. Remember that this is an alternative to other agricultural programs like loan waivers, etc. So we identified, 4 or 5, eminent candidates, interest rate loans, the extra MSP, maybe even aspects of Fasal Bima Yojana which don't work very well, and of course the fertilizer subsidy. So if you put all these together, I think you can come up with something like the amounts that are necessary. The thing is that I do believe that at this stage we should not add to the fiscal deficit either at the center or the states. And also I think we should find, permanent financing, not one-off financing like RBI resources.
But that's the former Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramaniam pitching the idea of a quasi-universal basic income scheme, which is also different from what the Congress is proposing, which is a minimum income guarantee scheme only for the poorest of the poor. Arvind Subramaniam's idea is to capture 75% of India's rural population. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of What's Up. Thanks very much for watching. Don't go anywhere. We're back in 30 on India Business Hour. But up next, markets ended the day on a mixed note. The Sensex and the Nifty closing in the red with minor losses. Markets Today Talkback takes the action forward.